Well, let's stay on this topic of something Triple H recently said. This next question was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
All right. I knew it.
Triple H recently said that he thinks Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre could be a Hogan versus Flair scenario. Triple H said, quote, I think a couple of years down the road, Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre is a Hulk Hogan Flair scenario, a Steve Austin Rock scenario, and you don't want to hit that before it peaks. What do you think about Triple H's take on Reigns versus McIntyre?
Well, he just lost me. And that's not knocking Roman Reigns or Drew McIntyre. I mentioned that I hadn't seen a lot of Roman Reigns, but that when we watched the match with Jey Uso, everything I've seen of him, he is a star. Drew McIntyre, great fucking look, great fucking size, great fucking work. But neither one of those guys is at the status of an Austin or a Rock or a Hogan or a Flair, and it's honestly not even their fault. It's the fact that nobody in today's current WWE is at the status of an Austin and a Rock or a Hogan and a Flair. So that's an impossible. When he says that puts pressure on those guys they're never going to live up to. It's not possible for any wrestler ever to get as big as those guys were again. Because that horse has left the barn. This business is not ever going to recover to that extent. And secondly, then you're putting the pressure on them to have the match. To be honest, having the Hogan and Flair match might not be that hard, because Flair dumbed it down a little bit, his deal, to do what Hulk was capable of doing. I don't see Roman Reigns and fucking Drew McIntyre having a Austin and Rock match. And I especially don't see that many people being interested in it, because I don't see that many people ever being interested in the wrestling business again. So that's kind of setting them up to fucking be disappointed, isn't it?
I'm really looking forward now to when they can finally have crowds back at the shows, just to see what the reactions are like for someone like Drew McIntyre, who I think has been great, but unfortunately he's been champion during the dark period of professional wrestling.
And here's another thing. When people come back, they're going to be easier. Think about this. Especially in the old days, when towns ran every week or every 2 weeks or every month, the regulars, especially the ones that sat around, the first few rows of ringside, they got kind of jaded. They had seen so much, especially in the big territories. Can you imagine if somebody had been sitting ringside at the Greensboro Coliseum for 10 years in 1986, that they had literally seen every great wrestler in the business multiple times, some of the best matches ever held? They got jaded, and it took that's why, well, for example, a town that would get opened up after it had been dark. Louisville did huge business the first 3 or 4 years that Jarrett opened it up, because everything was new, and the whole going to the matches was new, and yelling and screaming, and all the heels and all the talent, everything was new. And then there was the period where, okay, we've seen a little bit now, and the people settled. Because, they used to be able to, in 74, they could get fans in the ring and have the cops coming in with the nightsticks on shit that in 78, people are like hot, but they're throwing shit, right? Because they got more used to it. When Georgia Championship Wrestling went and opened up Ohio after it had been dead for a couple of years after the Sheik closed up, the guys that were there at the time had told me, God, it was great. The first match, you locked up and grabbed a headlock and the people blew. Ha! And then they made a mistake. And I can't even believe it, but part of this was due to Ole Anderson, the old-fashioned Ole. They started programming their finishes and their programs like they were doing in other places, but this was a virgin territory again. And the guys universally said they started doing run-ins too quick. They started doing angles too quick. They started doing fucking DQs too quick. or heat after or whatever. Because when the people were popping and blowing just on wrestling and the finish of the match, don't give them too much more shit. Because you're just giving them shit that then they will get numb to. So the point I'm making is, when the people first get back in the buildings, regardless of what promotion it is, if they've gone to see it, it's something they like, and they're going to be easy. And if the guys are smart, we already know the answer to this, they will hold back because the people will just be glad to be there and be seeing it. And they'll give them a good match and they'll give them good finishes and whatever, but they won't do every goddamn thing they know and take every risk they can, because you won't need to, because it's new again. Settle down. That's if they're smart. But since we know the answer to that, that's where somebody running the company has to be smart for them. So in the WWE, you're not going to see guys risking their necks as much as you would anywhere else, obviously, because there's investments in them and et cetera. But in AEW, they will start doing everything because they'll be so happy to have those fans back, because they're still in the Mark era of I'm so happy to be in this business and I want to do everything I can, that they will take it further and start doing more shit and taking more bumps and hitting each other with more stuff. And they'll burn through 2 years worth of shit in 6 months as soon as people are back in the building. That's my prediction. But there's always the chance they'll actually do the smart thing. Is there odds on that, Brian? Whether they'll do the smart thing or not?
I don't know if there are odds on that. I think we can look at WWE's track record and wonder if they'll do the smart thing or not and come up with a educated guess about what they'll do. But I wish there was a place I could place a bet on that.
Well, especially on AEW, because there ought to be odds on that, because they're awfully odd. So the odds on the odd people. Nevertheless, folks, if you want to bet on something you might make some money on, easy transition here, go to MyBookie. Between the NFL and college ball and the MLB playoffs, thousands of lines are available on all your favorite sports and events. You can turn your game day into payday with MyBookie. Whether you want to back the big favorites, consider putting a couple of bucks in a parlay for a much bigger payout. Whatever the case, MyBookie can take care of you. Every team has a chance to win. The NFL, the underdogs are never really dogs on Sunday. Every football fan knows that. It says it right here. Game spreads, championship futures, player prop bets. It's never too late to get in on the action. Start turning your sports knowledge into actual cash in your wallet. And when you sign up at MyBookie, use our promo code JCE to claim a deposit match dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. You put in 100, they'll give you another 100. It's designed to give you a little help and a head start on your winning season. The promo code JCE to claim your bonus when you make your first deposit, whether it be stacked UFC cards, presidential prop bets, all the major sports, whatever. You can bet on it. Will AEW shit the bed? We don't know. Maybe you can bet on that too. Sign up today to begin your winning season exclusively at mybookie.ag.